they get, stacked up basically. I don't know who that is. We started with a blank slate, we carved out our gardens, we did our lodging, and now we're into the next phase of building a big structure. We're building a structure to not only house a kitchen for our business, but we're also building a structure to be a geothermal greenhouse. So we've been researching geothermal greenhouses for the last 5 years and, kind of decide where it fit in for us. I've been researching 4-season farming and just kind of figuring out where we wanted to take our farm in relation to growing for year round. And not only in regards to winter, but with climate change, anybody that grows food knows it just gets less and less predictable and harder to grow food without some help. So the tunnels are a great piece to figuring out some of the issues with the weather shifts. You can control moisture, rain obviously, and heat and wind a little bit, but the problem is, we're up on a hill, we're in an extreme weather condition here, like very windy. It's not even a windy day today and it's windy. But in the winter, we get 60, 70, 80 mile an hour winds up here. These things can't stay up year round. Even in the summer, sometimes we have issues with extreme wind. So they're great for temporary season extension, just not, they can't handle the snow load. And we've risked it before and had an entire thing collapse on crops. So we're just not messing with that anymore.
Right.
So we have been working for the last 2 years and conceptualizing our plan, and our next step forward in trying to create revenue here at the farm. And so we have to leave less. We love doing pizza out and about, but really the goal ultimately was to bring people to this farm and share this experience with people. Not that the idea of agritourism is completely unique to us, but we're trying to find the story we can tell and the experience we can offer that's unique. We worked with a local firm, Trade Design Build, some friends of ours, and designed a geothermal greenhouse, and that's what you're looking at here. We just put the timbers up 2 days ago. The trusses, that is, the posts have been up, and it's amazing. I mean, we've been looking at the drawings, we've been picturing it in our head, but nothing compares to seeing these giant pieces of wood up in the sky.
Yeah.
This has been an amazing project so far. We basically, on the fly, switched from a 2,400 square foot greenhouse to what is now just under 4,500 square feet.
Wow. And this is what it will look like?
Yeah. These are some renderings that we did. We work in Revit, so these are some of those. In this rendering, the actual dormer, which, we've already got a couple bays framed up.
Yeah, you could see it. The greenhouse gets taller over there.
Yeah, just for a couple sections, and that was so that we could put a garage door in and they could actually drive a vehicle through. If you could do that, I'll grab those other drawings. Yeah, so this whole area is going to be polycarbonate on the south wall and on the south roof. And then the rest of the walls and the roofs are all standard insulation, pretty heavily insulated. And then this end bay, which we're actually kind of in right now.
Yeah, that's where we are.
Yep, we're on that end of the building. It started out as a utility room, and it's kind of shifted. We're actually working on figuring out the logistics of turning it into a processing kitchen for an agricultural business for Stone Bend.
I see. So that's like a separate section as well. I see a wall here.
So if you can picture it, we're gonna be growing food all along this. I mean, you imagine this is all windows here. This is all greenhouse corrugated plastic.
Right.
Yep, all south facing here. And it's gonna look out to a courtyard, which is, we're gonna welcome guests in next spring for wood-fired pizza, beer, cider from Buried Acorn Brewing and other local beer brewers and cider makers. And we're creating a really unique, what I'm calling an elevated patio. And yes, that is a play on words, where people can sit and enjoy this amazing view over this valley towards South Ithaca. we've took the time, which took about 2 months, to do the subfloor work here, which is something no one will ever see. But what it is about 10 feet of a geothermal matrix, insulation, concrete, gravel. I mean, a very, very substantial amount of work went into, and radiant heat into this concrete to create a sustainable future for this building, and a future that doesn't require a ton of fossil fuel or electricity or power in general outside of what nature's going to create. If you're not familiar with geothermal, the idea is that you're basically using the Earth's constant temperature about 6 feet, 8 feet down. You know, it stabilizes around 55 degrees. So what we're doing is we're circulating air underneath the ground, and it's coming right back up. And it basically gives you a much more realistic temperature to work from growing, you know, in the 50s.
So there's two systems that are embedded in the slab and below the slab. The slab itself is filled with radiant heat pipes.
That's what this is over
This is what
here,
this
yeah.
is, yep. So basically we're gonna have 2 electric hot water heaters in this room, and they're gonna heat water up and pass that through. I'm not clear yet whether or not they're gonna be doing a glycol system or if they're actually just gonna be pumping water through these. But basically we have, I think it's 18 loops running all the way down and back, embedded in the slab, which is a 6-inch concrete slab. So basically one of the main assisting heat sources outside of the sun is going to be the slab. So this is going to get heated and kind of regulate the overall temperature in the greenhouse a little bit. You know, in the summertime it'll be off, so it'll be nice and cool, hopefully. But you know, then in the wintertime we'll be able to kick this on.
Would this also work in the hot summer to cool down the greenhouse?
No, it's a situation where if you get into a condensation issue. So if you're creating, you're running cool water through this and creating coolness in the slab, it actually can cause problems. So
I see. So it's really for heating.
Yeah, it's primarily for heating. Yeah. So then the second system is a GAHT system, which you know is kind of a technical term for a very rudimentary ground source geothermal system. So GAHT stands for ground air heat transfer.
Which is those pipes, like? Can we walk over there? Oh, there's actually one right here.
Yeah. So the ground air heat transfer system, basically what this consists of is there's 3 sets of pipes that are buried anywhere between 5 to 2.5 feet below the slab. And they consist of 2 tubes of this 18-inch corrugated sluice pipe, I guess is what you would call it.
Okay.
So this goes down underground and then elbows over and runs across the entire length of the building.
Ah, okay.
And that's hooked up into 24 4-inch drain tile runs, which are pretty much the same stuff that we've got coils
that you
of
see
set up
over there.
Right? So you can see in this drawing, this system has been flipped, but this is the outlet that we're standing next to, which is now in this corner.
Okay.
So basically this runs across the building, and then there's all these fingers of those 24 runs of the 4-inch drain tile that connect to another pipe over there, which stubs up. So what's gonna happen is we're gonna put an inline fan at the top of that. That'll draw air down in from the greenhouse, both at the hottest points of the year and at the coldest points. Pass all of that air through the matrix of the 4-inch drain tiles, and then it'll come back up through here. And the idea is that when it's really hot in here, we'll be able to draw the hot air out of the greenhouse, pass it through this matrix, cool it down, dump some of the heat underground, and then, you know, it comes back up. I think it's anywhere between 7 to 10 degrees cooler.
Right. So is that pipe then going up further into the greenhouse more?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
So
right. Because you want to capture all the heat that's like stuck at the top of the greenhouse.
Yep.
Cool, like draw that down and it will pop over here. Now, how does that, like, what's the best medium for that heat transfer to happen underground? Like, is it?
It's just gravel, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. There is a sweet spot that they recommend. There's a couple types of gravel. This is a number 4. It's just common, you know, bank run gravel.
Yeah.
So.
And concrete itself is already really good too to hold the heat, right? But this is happening below the concrete.
This is all happening below ground. So the idea is that, you know, the natural heat from the earth will kind of mitigate the section of ground and earth that these pipes pass through. So when we dump heat in there in the summer, the earth will naturally cool it to 56 degrees, I think, is the ambient temperature down there. And then again in the winter time, if there's cold air that's getting down to 40 degrees, we'll be able to bring it down, pass it through, and do the same thing, heat it up and just bump it up and kind of hopefully hold a midpoint where we're having to rely on the sun a little less and the slab a little less. And the hope is that we're not going to have to put any other alternate heat sources in the building.
Right.
So it's a bit of an upfront investment for them, but the long run, all they're really having to do to run this system is run those 3 inline fans, and that should be it. So hopefully that's going to kind of offset any investment in, an HVAC system.
Right. So then even that is almost just a backup.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And
Time will tell.
What are some of the benefits of using this system versus like hot forced air or something?
It's the overall consistency of the heat. We're able to get the slab heated up to 70 to 80 degrees, depending on how hot they're running the water through it, and it holds that temperature. It doesn't take a lot of energy to be able to kind of hold that temperature for the slab, and at night the slab will just kind of radiate that heat into the air.
Right.
So, it's a really kind of consistent heat source that, it's also really comfortable. It's nice to be able to come in here.
Yeah, you'll walk on it,
walk
it's
around
nice
on
and
the warm
warm.
floor. It's going to be amazing. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Which if you were to do forced air, it would easily disappear out of the building.
Yeah.
Plus, it won't really absorb into the stone.
And we're going to have 4 feet of insulation, so we're going down probably 2 feet, and then we're going to go out 4 feet with rigid insulation. The idea is it's designed to hold all of the heat in the GAHT system and for the radiant slab.
So here on the edge, you're just going to pack it with, I guess, that styrofoam over there?
Yep. Yeah, we've got rigid foam that we're basically going to attach to the outside of the building. We're stopping that 6 inches short from the finished floor. And then in between these permacolumns, we're going to do 2 courses of CMUs, which is concrete masonry units, or cinder blocks, people know them as. So once those are installed, we'll actually put a moisture barrier to bridge between the CMUs and this slab, the edge of the slab, to cover up that seam. And then we'll run rigid insulation all the way up. Again, this south side is all getting covered in polycarbonate, so that's going to stop at the top of the CMUs.
Yeah.
But on the north wall, we're going to have a constant layer of 2 inches of rigid foam that go all the way up the outside wall and up onto the roof. Yeah, and the idea, again, with that insulation, we're losing a lot less heat out of this slab, so the heat's going to be able to kind of warm up, kind of capture all that heat inside of it, and that insulation will help kind of retain that in the building.
It's got a big jacket on.
Yeah.
Now then, I see here these, out of the concrete, are these pillars that rise out, and the beams are sitting on top of that.
Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting product. They're called permacolumns, and they're typically used for pole barns. So this was a product that we kind of discovered early on when we still had the 2,400 square foot greenhouse as opposed to this one, and we just kind of carried it over from that earlier design. And the idea is that, having these in the ground, they're rot resistant, obviously, as they're made of concrete as opposed to wood, so they're going to last a lot longer. And with these saddles, once they're bolted into the actual timbers, they become one structural member, so it's a moment connection. So those are actually the structural resistance for the rest of the frame. So instead of having to come through and pour a frost wall and then figure out some way to attach these timber structures to that in a similar situation as this, we were able to just use these permacolumns, place all of these, form up the slab, and then pour the slab once these were already all in place. So they've posed their challenges for sure. They've definitely been a little tricky, but all in all, it was a really good choice, I think.
What's tricky about it? Just get them in place?
The tricky part was lining them all up, and we had a couple big rain events up here, so the ground softened a little bit, and they started to move around a little bit, and it got a little precarious trying to keep them in line and keep them exactly where we wanted, because obviously a lot of this is going to be exposed, And we really wanted to make sure that it was all tightened up and still kind of stayed in line. So once they started moving around, they were a little tricky to
Ooh,
like.
that's tricky because all these other measurements rely on those being in the right position, right?
Yep.
And then I see a lot of these cuts in the concrete. Can you tell me what that's for?
Yeah, those are just stress cuts. So basically, concrete is the old adage is there's two types of concrete. There's concrete that's cracked and there's concrete that hasn't cracked yet. So basically, what these are, they're called control joints. So you lay them out at a regular basis, and when the concrete moves and cracks and settles a little bit, those cracks happen in these joints, so you don't get these really ugly cracks in the middle of your floor. So
interesting.
yeah,
Cool.
Yeah,
And
it's
then
a pretty standard thing.
Yeah, and then you have this like this vent here in the middle.
Yeah.
I assume that's for like water.
Yep. Yeah. So this is a trench drain. We've got a thickened footer in the middle of this that runs all the way down. It starts 12 inches outside of this footer, or the drain, and it comes over pretty much to this control joint.
Oh, wow.
And it's serving two purposes. It was a thickened area so that we've got downspouts coming out of this drain at 6 locations, and they elbow out, and the drains are actually going to connect to the footer drain on the outside of the building. And then the other half of this thickened footer is going to be to support the center line of columns that are going to get installed in these saddles that are incorporated into the collar ties.
Oh, I see. Yeah, these
Right?
ones.
So we're going to have a 3-inch square tube steel column that's going to get inserted in there, welded at the top, and it's going to have a base plate that's going to get 4 structural screws embedded into the slab, and then that gets grouted underneath, and that becomes one of the structural elements. And obviously these timbers are able to support themselves, but we needed another support point in the middle of these for the snow loads.
I see.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
because
gotta-
it's a huge roof, so
Yeah.
the amount of weight that that you need to carry, it's good to have some extra support.
Yeah.
So this goes down into the slab, and then it comes out here.
Yeah.
And I also imagine that there's a lot of rain and water and snow coming down this roof, and that's all going to be dumped on this side of the building.
Yeah, it is.
Which is
it's a little nerve-wracking.
water and
Yeah,
concrete
so,
is not a good thing.
I don't have the calculation memorized, but it is a pretty substantial amount of water. And basically what we've got is we're going to end up with a 7 or 8 foot wide swath of this number 2 stone on the south side of this building. You can see this trench drain that we've got.
I see.
The footer drain, if you will. It's pretty much the same thing. And that's going to run down to this corner, and then it's actually going to get piped downhill. First, it's going to land in a couple storage tanks. So we're actually going to have a sediment tank, about 750 gallons. So the water will initially dump into that, allow all the sediment to settle out, and then there will be a spillover into a larger, probably 2,000 gallon tank that we're going to put a kind of a localized hydrant on. With a float pump and that, so that Terry and Shaughnessy can have a hydrant out here and be able to use all of this rainwater to water the various things that they're going to be doing on the
That's incredible.
property.
Yeah, so you're doing you're doing rainwater harvesting.
Yeah.
But you're doing it through the ground, and then
Yeah.
this. I imagine, is that the same thing as a septic system? That would go
No,
in
it's
there,
not.
or?
It's actually once it gets through that second storage tank, it's going to continue down to daylight. So it's eventually going to run out and just be a drainage system.
I see.
So we basically just decided, or Terry and Shaughnessy decided that, they wanted to be able to grab some of this water, both the stuff that's going to go through this trench drain and the roof. It's all going to pass through that double cistern system, and they'll just be able to utilize that instead of tapping into their well, so they don't run into any issues with potentially.
It's great. You might as well reuse that water.
Yeah, and that stuff's going to all be. The top of those tanks is going to be about 5 feet underground, so the bottom of those things are going to be, well buried beneath the earth, probably 10 to 12 feet. So, they're going to be, warm all winter long, so they'll have access to water.
Right.
I don't know if they're going to need it out here, but.
And that's why you're also burying it deep, is because obviously it needs to be below the frost line to prevent it from freezing in the winter and any of these connections.
Yeah.
So then, at last, we have the beams. The beautiful beams.
Yeah.
First of all, why, if you think of any greenhouse, been to many greenhouses, and most of the time it's like a metal or aluminum structure, but this is wood.
Yeah, a lot of people have asked me about that. It seems a little counterintuitive, but again, the nature of the project was one that they were really focusing on a hospitality experience, So early on, when this greenhouse was a smaller footprint, there was an intention of using a lot of it for seating for people to be able to have wedding parties and bridal showers and stuff inside this, or they had the market open, they'd have people in here being able to come in and have a beer and sit in the greenhouse. So that whole idea kind of carried over, and because we had kind of started headed down that road where we were doing a timber greenhouse originally, we started poking around, and there are some out there. It's not completely unheard of. There's going to have to be some mitigation as far as making sure that there's no constant moisture sitting on the timbers, but we've got white oak timbers throughout, and it's going to take a really long time for there to be any serious damage done to them, is our hope. And everything else has been considered with the idea of being in a greenhouse. So we're going with all metal studs to infill everything. We're using Roxel insulation, so that's all moisture resistant. The idea really is to be able to have a space that people really want to come see and hang out in and experience.
It's a lot more inviting to have beautiful steel and beautiful wood exposed. It gives a much warmer feel.
So it's not something we hadn't thought about. It's kept me up at nights for sure sometimes. But
because is it pretty much the same as far as structural capacity? Like if you go with aluminum or wood, or what are the challenges?
They've got pre-engineered systems for those commercial aluminum greenhouses, which is actually interesting because the whole system that we're using for the polycarbonate, I actually did some research and found a company out in California that makes those aluminum commercial greenhouses. And I started talking to one of the owners of that company and was like, hey, what if, can we just take the purlin system and the polycarbonate and the mounting system for that and actually scab that onto the system that we're doing with these timbers? And so, I talked to him. I've been working with him a lot to figure out all the trim details and how all this thing's going to go together. So really it is a bit of a mix. But in the end, again, we worked with a local engineer who, has vetted all of this system really thoroughly, and I think it's all going to work in the end.
Nice.
Fingers crossed.
So we have a beam going up here. Should we go check it out real quick?
Yeah.
So you're attaching all these beams together with these metal brackets.
Yeah, so these are collar ties in the center that are basically keeping the timber frames from opening out. And then at each joint, we've got a engineered gusset plate on both sides, so the joints are kind of cinched together with those.
Yeah, and that's just to hold them in place because the weight itself is just carried by the beams.
Yeah, and that's why it's not a standard, a traditional timber frame, because in a traditional timber frame, all of that joinery would be done with mortise and tenons and pegs and that stuff. And that stuff's also engineered. But, as far as just being able to do this a little bit more efficiently, we felt like this was a much more sensible approach to the whole thing. And in the end, I don't know, I think it looks pretty cool too.
Yeah, it has a certain aesthetic to it as well.
Yeah, so that's it. We've got some tired bodies at the end of the day once people have been lugging these things around. It's been a lot of work, but...
I saw some of your guys trying to move these beams, and it's just, they're so heavy. It's unreal. And then this crane, well, today has been going really well, actually. You got all of this up in a couple of hours, and this crane over here is just picking them up like matchsticks and putting them into place. Everything is fitting really well.
Yeah, we had expected this was going to take probably 3 days, was the average estimate. But this is the first day, and we're setting the 11th timber already, and it's not even 3 o'clock, I don't think. So, yeah, it's a little after 2 o'clock. So we're hoping by the end of the day we might have all of these done. And we got to go through and just brace everything off. So hopefully we don't get any wind events up here and nothing falls over.
You're saying polycarbonate? Is that the roof that's going on there?
Yep.
And it's like a double layer of plastic?
Yeah, we're going with a double wall polycarbonate.
Right.
Yep.
Why are you choosing that over something like glass?
Glass systems, they can break. So, the polycarbonate's a really good kind of in-between versus, the sheet vinyl plastic that you see on hoop houses like they've got over here.
Right.
The polycarbonate's much more shatter resistant, and it's also got a slight insulative value that's much better than the single layer.
Is that because of that air layer between
an air gap. They actually make 5-wall polycarbonate, which has got a pretty impressive R value to it, or U value, if you will. The price point and the availability of the double wall, we did a lot of research on that and looked into, whether we should go with double wall or triple wall were the two final candidates. And then in the end, I kind of got leaned towards the double wall just because that seems to be the more ubiquitous one in the commercial industry.
Yeah.
In agricultural greenhouses. So
with so much south-facing windows,
yeah.
how are you going to be able to control, say, if it's a hot summer day, you have a lot of sunlight coming in?
Well, no, Terry has talked a little bit about possibly putting some shade systems in. He hasn't kind of worked that out yet, I don't think. He hasn't been talking to me about it too much. This is something I think they're going to wait and figure out once they get in here and really kind of live in it a little bit. Beyond that, we are going to be doing 5 industrial exhaust vent systems. So there's going to be louvers on the south wall and then an exhaust fan in 5 places on the north wall. Those will all be hooked into a thermostat. So when, the temperature gets to a certain range, too hot or too cold, they'll be able to kind of evacuate some of the air. They can actually do a full air turnover in here, I think, in less than 2 minutes. So if it gets too hot, hopefully it's 110 in here and 90 outside, and they can bring the 90-degree air in and cool it down, if you will. Right. But again, the GAHT system should also help mitigate that. And depending on how all these systems work out and how things go, there is also the option down the road if they feel like they need it to put in a mini split system. So we've got one of those kind of spec waiting in the wings if they need to pull the trigger on it. But we're hoping they don't have to. It would be really nice to save them a couple of bucks.
Yeah, because has this ever been really done to this extent? Are there many other projects that you can learn from, or is this kind of the first thing?
I mean, as far as, there's industrial agricultural greenhouses out there for sure, but I haven't found many of these. This is pretty exciting because it was an opportunity to do something that was, there's not many precedents out there right now. So, we'll see.
Well, it's a great strategy to put in a lot of different systems that allow you to regulate, even once it's built, and just have full stewardship over the greenhouse.
Yeah, and they're going to, they'll get in an irrigation system. They're really talking about doing a lot of tropical plants in here. So, Terry wants to get lemon trees, lime trees, mangoes, bananas, he wants to be able to have people come and just experience something that they're not going to be able to see around here, other than up at Cornell maybe, but this is going to be a pretty special spot.
Well, super cool. Thank you so much, Gideon, for taking us through this.
So if you can picture it, the facade here, this is the east wall here. We're gonna have a big glass garage door right here. And then there'll be a small man door right here. And this will be, certain times of the year, this will be open. So the public can come right in and buy some plant starts or buy some produce, or maybe, depending on what we're doing that day, maybe a baked good. And they'll be able to come right up here and shop. We plan on kind of, creating a little canopy here, a little outdoor nursery marketplace, There's a little driveway here for people to pull in and grab stuff quickly. And then this is gonna be a future little parking area for when we have pizza events on the weekends. Yeah, so you walk in the doors here, and this is like what we call one of our main paths as we vision it. And of course, everything I pictured in my head over the last few months and everything we've talked about is, I know, inevitably gonna shift as soon as we start building things in here. But we picture a bunch of beds, raised beds all the way down the south wall here. But you see the height here is not conducive to getting really close, but that's intentional. Makes it to where we have a growing area here that's protected. And these are gonna be rolling beds. We've kind of conceptualized these rolling beds that will change season to season. So we'll be able to start a bunch of stuff here in late winter, early spring, that just gets rolled right out of the greenhouse for not just food production, but also, kind of an aesthetic feature to the courtyard. On the right, as you walk down the main path, and again, this is something that will shift, but my vision is for vertical growing here up to about 7 or 8 feet, as to not block the light going this way. But doing berries, a lot of you-pick berries, a lot of greens, things that people can just enjoy looking at as they go by, but things that we can produce a ton of in a very small space. Here and here, you'll see this hardware up here where it looks like something's gonna set in there. These posts that help support this building will be driven in here and attached to the ground. And we're actually gonna, that's not just a feature of this building to make it stable, but we're gonna utilize those posts to create another thing we've conceptualized that we haven't built yet, are these movable shelves that can adjust and we can put growing trays on them. We can use them for storage, but they'll look nice too. It's another feature where we can use wood and tie in the elements of this building. But yeah, you'll be able to walk down this whole thing. I mean, you're gonna be looking at the blue sky and greenery on your left and right. On a busy Friday or Saturday, you're gonna be seeing people enjoy pizza out here and libations and live music. We want you to feel consumed by nature when you're here, by growth and by life. Oh, we passed it, but right here is actually going to be a big glass garage door, So this is actually gonna be a pass-through. So we have the ability to pull we're still messing around with this, but to pull our oven in here, not when there's fire going, but when it's hot. So after we use our pizza oven, it usually holds heat. It's very well insulated. It's an Italian-made oven, and it holds heat for days. So, for instance, we did pizza at Lucky Hare last night. The oven was about 750 most of the night, 800 maybe. Today, this morning, it was 600 degrees still, and it will be probably 500-600 degrees most of today. So we can pull that oven right in here and just park it in here and just let that heat radiate off the oven. It's a way to let the oven cool down in a more responsible manner in cold weather so it doesn't crack. And it also obviously just repurposes that energy. So we're always trying to work towards that, closing the loop in every way, from using the pizza boxes that people return to us in our compost, to using the heat from that oven to bake bread the next day or to heat this greenhouse, So we're always, and that's an everyday changing thing. You're always seeing one more thing where you're like, oh, that's another place we can do that. And actually, with that in mind, if you look down here, you'll see what looks like a basic trench drain alongside all the perimeter of this building. And that's pretty typical, to put a trench drain in, and it just helps keep the water off the building. And there's gonna be a lot of water obviously coming off this building when it rains, but we're redirecting all that drainage water to tanks and then a pond right down the hill from us where we're standing. And so we're actually gonna repurpose all that water to irrigate our lower non-food crops, flowers and other perennials we have. So we're really, tried every step of the way to try to think about things. And I know we've missed things. You can't help but miss things, but we're just trying to overthink, honestly, a lot of things. It doesn't mean we act on all of them, but we try to at least explore the possibilities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could honestly walk around up here all day in the bones of this building.
Yeah.
I really could. I'm so excited. It's
Stay tuned for the progress of Stone Bend's greenhouse build leading up to their launch here on Flock. And if you haven't heard yet, we'll be donating and investing 10% of our YouTube AdSense revenue from this channel back into the Finger Lakes community. We're so thankful that Espoma, our partners across both the Plant One On Me and Flock Finger Lakes channels, will be matching those funds this year, as well as through a combination of monies and/or products, depending on the project. So just know that by watching these videos, you're helping the community here.